I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we go back to our Microsoft Access playlist, and we're going to take a look at class modules. Now, most Access developers, at least from what I've seen in my career, most of us have used regular modules for the majority of our code, and that has done a great job just on its own. Between your regular modules and your sort of code behind modules on forms and reports and things like that, you can do almost everything that you need to do in Microsoft Access. But there's always been these class modules that have been sitting there, this neat little feature that's related to object-oriented programming, and they are actually really cool. And truth be told, I never really used class modules in Microsoft Access or classes at all until after I used classes in Visual Basic, visualbasic.net that is, and I did over a decade of programming in visualbasic.net, and I was using classes all the time. And then I kind of looked back at my Access programming and I was going, you could do some pretty cool things with classes in Microsoft Access, and indeed I have seen some really great stuff that people have done with classes. You can do all kinds of neat things with them. We're going to do a simple demonstration today. Let's get to it. Interested in more cool topics like these? Make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. Okay guys, this is a fun one today. We get to talk about classes and how we can use those in our programming. This is the Access file that I've created, and I will make this available on my downloads page. Make sure you check that out. If you go to the Create ribbon, you can see that we have our module and class module available there, plus the Visual Basic button, and we're going to choose class module from the ribbon there, and that will give us a class module. And we can save that if we want. We can type in CLS Candy. That stands for class Candy, and that means that we're going to have a new class module to work with. It already has option compare database in there, and I'm going to put in option explicit because we're going to do some debug compiles along the way here, and I want to make sure that I catch anything if there's any things that I blow up in my programming here. Okay, so when we create a class, we want to represent something from the real world, generally speaking, and in this case it is a candy. And so we want that candy to have certain properties, and we're going to store those properties in some local sort of variables here, private variables, and we'll call those a name, flavor, and weight. And the M stands for module level variable, and the S stands for string, and D stands for decimal in this case, and it can stand for D. That's why you see MS and MD there for this particular naming convention. And when we use classes and we create objects for those or from those, we want to be able to get the values or the properties of the object, and we also want to be able to set the values. And so VBA has get and let in this case, so we'll use get to get the value of the name of the candy. So if we have one of these created and it's a chocolate bar, then we can say what is the S name of that, and it'll say chocolate bar. And if we want to set the name of the value, we can use that let property there. So now make a mental note that what I'm showing you today is the classic way of doing it for object-oriented programming. You can actually just say public MS name as string, and you can avoid doing all of these sort of get and let statements, and it's sort of a shortcut that you can use with VBA, which makes it nice and easy. But I'd like to show you today the sort of classic way of doing it, where we have private variables, and then those are set and retrieved using get and let statements on the property. So let's do the same thing. We'll do the same thing for flavor. And so just like we did for the name, we can get the flavor if we want. So if we have one of these objects created and we want to know what the flavor is, we can just say our variable or our object dot s flavor, and that'll give us the flavor. If we want to set the flavor of the object that we've created, we can do that as well, where we can say, you know, our object dot s flavor equals whatever. And so we can do the same thing with our weight, and the weight will be a double, and we're going to put a D in there for double. So D weight, we can get the value of our weight from the object using this property, and then we can also set the value using the let property, and we'll do that now. So that allows us to basically populate the object, but we can, the nice thing is compared to our other module-based programming is that we can create any number of these once we have the class created. So we can have, 182 parts, for example, if you're doing a part assembly, and that would be very, very handy for that. And so this is where the power of object-oriented programming sort of comes in here. Whether or not VBA is considered to be a full object-oriented programming language is a discussion for another time, but generally speaking it is not considered fully object-oriented, but it has many of the cool, probably most of the cool, useful parts of OOP that you could use in your program, and it helps you to really consolidate your code. And we can create a function to return some information about our object, and so the function can also run code. You can create a subroutine as well, which doesn't return a value but runs a bunch of code. So you can say myCandy dot, run my big procedure, or myCandy dot return my information, and that's really cool. Okay, let's do a debug compile. That looks like I didn't get any big errors. There are our private variables. We can get and set those, and we've got a function, and that's really all we need for our candy. Okay, so now we need a candy box. So let's go to that create ribbon and hit our class module again, and you can see we've got a new class module there, and we can hit save, and then we can create our CLS candy box, and that's going to give us a box to put our candies into. And so that's going to be another class which can make objects that can work with our candy objects or other objects in the database, as I'll show you. And just like we did with our candy class, we can do the same thing with our candy box class, where we can add some variables that are particular or belong to the candy box. A particular candy box, when it is an object, when you've created one, it'll have certain characteristics or properties and things like that. And so we've got, candies is a collection. We've got box name, which is a string, so we're going to give whatever one we create a name. And then we've got total weight and a creation date. And I added creation date because I wanted to show you what the constructor looks like in VBA. And we can actually go and create our own private sub and give the name and everything, but you can also grab it from the download. If you just grab the class there, it'll immediately create that initialize variable, and that's kind of like a constructor that you might see in other languages, where this is the actions that happen when you first create a new object. So when you say, I'm going to make a new box, candy box, well, it'll automatically do these steps right at the moment you create the box. And so we have our candies as a collection. We're going to create a new collection, and then we're going to set that creation date to now. So when we started that. Now, in other languages, you'll see that you can put in, I want to create my new box, and I'm going to give it the name and everything right away in the constructor, and that's very, very handy. However, VBA does not have that, and there are different strategies you can take in order to make it work kind of like other languages, and you can check those out. But for today, we're just going to use the basic constructor, and it doesn't allow us to specify startup values for our variables. But just like we did in the previous class, what we'll do in this class is we'll have a mechanism to set values and to get values from our object when it's created. And so we can create the property called sBoxName, and we can set or retrieve the value of that property. And so you can see we've got our box name at the very top there, ms_box name, and that is the value that we can set using a value that we put in when we actually set the value. So Now for the creation date, if we want to see that, we can definitely retrieve that from the object, but we don't need to set it because that's set when we have our class initialized. And so all we really need to do is to be able to get the value of our property, and so that's what we're doing there. And then we have everything we need in order to populate startup candy box there. And then what we can do is we can add a method, and we can add a method which will add a candy to it. And so we'll do a subroutine, and this is where we can say public sub, and then we'll do add candy. So we'll do my candy box whatever dot add candy, and then it'll add a candy object to our candy box. And so we can say that our collections, so our MC underscore candies dot add, and we'll put whatever candy we pass into it will be added to the candy box, but we'll also add the total weight because the candy has a weight. So we'll say that the total weight of the candy box is equal to its current weight plus the candy's D weight. And so you can see immediately how this becomes nice and easy to use, and how the code actually works well together when we can do things like add total weights and things, or prices and things like that. Those are really nice and handy to use once we start using methods inside of classes. And so we'll do a function. So now we can pass back the total weight. Say we want to give the total weight of the candy box, and we've added the weights of each of the candies as we put them in. So that means all we have to do is just return the value of MD underscore total weight, and that's going to give us the total weight of the candy box. And we could have another function. Maybe we want to return a description of our candy box. What's going on in our candy box after we've added some candies to it. So we could say public function, and we could say S for string, get candy box details as string, and then we could say we've got a candy object that we're going to reuse. We're going to put that in a loop, and it will represent each of the candies as it goes through the loop of candies. So it'll check out each of the candies in our box, and then as it goes through we'll add some detail, but we'll start our detail string with the name of the candy box. So we'll say candy box is, and we'll put in the variable that you can see at the top here, the ms underscore box name, and that's going to give us a starting string for our detail that we're going to return. From there we can start our loop. So we can say for each object candy, or each candy in the candies collection, MC underscore candies, let's add something to our details. So we'll say s details equals s details and candy dot s get candy details and a carriage return. So now we've got a nice little loop that's going to go through each of the candies in the candy box, and it's going to add the detail from that candy because we created the candy.sGetCandy details. We created that in the candy class, and so that's nice and easy to return. And so there we go. There's our starting string, and then for each of the candies, add to the detail, loop through until you're done, and then return the string when you're done, and return that as the value of the function. And that will make it so we can go candybox.sGetCandyBoxDetails, and that will give us a nice description of what's inside of our candy box. Now you can do all kinds of other stuff too, and so it's very, very important that you get this part of it, because this is what I find to be the most useful part of using classes with my Access and other kinds of databases and other programming languages, is being able to put all kinds of interop and useful functions into your classes, because your class might want to commit to the database, and so maybe we want to take this candy box and save it to our database, and so we can do that as I'm going to show you here. But we can also do things like you can perform certain operations that are specific to candy boxes. and you can, do notification, notify, candybox.notify I'm ready or whatever. You can do all kinds of things inside of the class, and then you could have, 10 different or 100 different candy boxes at different stages of being loaded. And then when certain ones are loaded, you can send notifications, you can commit it to the database and things like that. And so in this case, I'm just going to do a simple commit. I'm going to say, in a slightly different way than we did our getCandyBoxDetails, I'm going to build a delimited string instead, and I'm going to stick that into a field in the database. And so very similar to what we had before, except in this one we're just going to build our delimited string, and then we're going to save our candy box to a table. And so we can go sCandyContents equals sCandyContents and the candy.sname. And so that's what we want to do, and we'll put the flavor in there too. And so this is going to build a little string for us that we can put into a database field. This is not meant to be super normalized or anything. This is just to demonstrate that you can do data operations as part of your methods in your classes. And so what we'll do is we're going to reference our database and our record set just like we've done a million times on this channel, and we'll open that, and then we'll do .add new. We'll use the with block there to make it nice and clean. That just means that we're saying rs exclamation on each line, but we don't have to add the rs there. Makes it cleaner. And so there's our candy contents. So we're going to add new, and we're going to set the box name equal to the box name, the box contents equal to the candy contents. We'll set the weight equal to the total weight of the box, and then we'll set the date stamp equal to the date stamp that was done when the box was first created as part of the constructor, which you might remember from the start of this lesson. And then we'll do a .update and then close, because we're just going to close that record set as soon as we're done, and then we'll set that equal to nothing, set the database equal to nothing. And then now you can sort of see that you can put these kinds of blocks of code into your classes, and it makes them super powerful. Like I said, there's the add new. We're setting all the values, update, close, and then we are good to go. And that's really going to make it for that. Let's do a debug compile. Oh, I broke stuff already. Check it out. Okay, so what did I do wrong here? That should be let instead of set. Let's set that one. Do another debug compile. Oh, I broke it somewhere else too. This variable is not defined. So this was caught because I used option explicit at the top. That's very nice. So all of our variables need to make sense. If we're using option explicit, we'll do debug compile again. And there doesn't seem to be anything major there. So now we've got our candy class and our candy box class, and we are good to go. Now let's see how we can put this into action. Okay, so we could use a form or something like that. You could do it, as a button event or something if you wanted to. I'm sure you could use that, but in this case we're going to use just a normal module, which is different from our class modules as we talked about before. And we can go ahead and save that, and we'll call this one our mod candy stuff. And this would be maybe like a module where you're calling all kinds of different stuff and connecting to forms, or you could do it as code behind on one of your forms or reports or something you can call it. But in this case we're going to use mod candy stuff, and these functions can be called and subroutines can be called from anywhere in your program without making a new object. But in this case, we are using our objects that we created, and so we're going to declare those at the top of our procedure here, and we'll say that we've got 3 candies and we've got a candy box. And so we're going to make 3 candies. We're going to put those candies in the candy box, and then we're going to display the detail about the candy box, and then we're going to commit it to the database using the methods in our candy box class there. And so we can set our candy1 equal to new candy, And then we're going to use the with block again, so we can say with candy 1, we'll say that the name is chocolate bar, the flavor is chocolate, and the weight is 50, for example. And that's going to give us our starting object there, our first candy. And that will be the first one that we can use, that we can put into our candy box when we're ready. But let's make some more. So we can set candy 2 equal to new candy again. We'll use that CLS candy for class candy. And we'll say with our candy 2, set the name and set the flavor and the weight, just like we did before. We'll do a gummy bear. I don't know, gummy bear. We'll set the flavor equal to fruit for now, and we'll put a weight of 10 on that. And so that's going to give us kind of an idea of what this candy is all about. And then we can do a third candy, and we can load that one up like we did with the other ones. Now you can also have one candy object and loop through, say you have a bunch of records, and you can load up that from the records and then reuse the same candy object over and over again and do things with it, and then commit it and save it in different ways. This is just using candy 1, 2, and 3 as an example. So there's many ways that you can call and use these objects. So we'll call that one caramel chew, and it's got a weight of 15, and we're good to go. So let's put a little comments on here. We'll put some comments. We'll say candies, and now we'll do our candy box. And now we can just say set our candy box equal to new candy box, our class, which is a candy box, and we'll say with candy box, and then we can set some values in here. So we can say the box name is equal to sweet treats or something like that. You can give it whatever name that you like, and then we can say .add candy. Now this is what makes object-oriented programming so nice, is when you can use your methods like this, because you can just say .add candy, candy 1, .add candy, candy 2, .add candy, candy 3, and that's really awesome. And it adds it to the box, and it makes it nice and makes the code nice and easy to read. You never had to go and look at anything about how candies or candy boxes work when you're writing this part of the code. It's really awesome that way. So we can just go, hey, let's give a message about the details of our candy box or something along those lines. Let's go ahead and create a message box. So we'll give some feedback to the user, and we can use that get candy box details with the dot, because we're still in the with and with block. And so we can say total weight is, and we'll get the dot total weight, because we can use the dot get total weight, and then we'll put grams on the end there, and or something along those lines. And that's going to give us 2 message boxes. And then maybe we want to commit to the database and do other kinds of stuff. So you can do .commit to database. We don't have to write any of that code related to the commit or anything like that. And if you had other sort of logic in your class, then you could just use simple commands there as well. And so there are our candies 1, 2, and 3. And we've got our candy box, which we've loaded there. And we've put our candies into the candy box, and we've given some messages about that, and we've done some database operations. And so that gives you an idea of how easy it is to use these after you've declared those variables. Now let's do a debug compile, make sure I didn't break anything. Well, it looks like I'm doing okay there. I'm hoping for the best. What if I hit go on this? I'm a little scared. There we go. We've got, that looks good. So we've got our message. This is our message coming back with our chocolate bar and our gummy bear and all that kind of stuff. And there is our weight. But we've got an error here. Oh, we didn't create the table yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and we can debug that. So you can see that commit statement is not going to work if there's no table to put the data in. So let's go and make a table here. Okay, back to the navigation pane. There are our modules, our class modules and our regular module there. And we're going to do create table design, and let's grab a auto number for our candy box ID. We'll put box name in. We'll put in the box contents, which will be that delimited list, and we'll put in our weight. And I think that's all we need there. Oh, we need a date stamp as well. So let's do that, and that should give us all of our fields for this, and we'll save that. And there we go, table candy box, we'll call that. That was the name we gave it in the code, and I didn't set my primary key, but there's an auto number there, so you can see that got created automatically on the first column, and we are good to go. So now let's go and try that again. Alright, so here we can hit play. Now we've added all of our candies to the candy box. We've got the same message we had before. We can go OK. It says, hey, total weight is 75, and then it exits. And if we open our candy box table, and you can see all of our data has been entered there from the commit on our candy box object, and that is how you can use class modules in Visual Basic for applications. Want to ghost those hundreds of spammers that are knocking on the door on your remote desktop machine? Make sure to check out my BZ RDP cloaker. The link is in the description.